Well, it only took me several years to realize I was not watching the original theatrical version of Aliens, but the film's extended cut, i.e. the special edition. I'm sure many of you know about this version and the history and additional scenes added to it, but I just realized recently, so you gotta hear me geek out and blab about it. Made for CBS in 1989, the special edition version contained many scenes that were not present in the original version, but it was not until 1991 that James Cameron helped create the special edition version for the Laserdisc format of the film. Since then, it has entered the quadrilogy formats as an alternate viewing experience. James Cameron has stated that the extended cut was to be the original theatrical version. However, due to pushback from 20th Century Fox regarding the film's length, Cameron had the movie trimmed down. There are a plethora of extended scenes and dialogue exchanges, both big and small, but the extended scenes I want to focus on are Newt's family investigating the derelict ship, Ripley finding out her daughter passed away, the sentry guns annihilating the xenomorphs, and a conversation between Newt and Ripley. One thing I want to stress before I get into this is why I just recently learned of the extended version. That is because I own the 2014 Alien Quadrilogy DVD version, and when you put Aliens into the player, the only version that plays is the special edition. There is no alternative viewing choice for the theatrical release, but once I acquired the Blu-ray version of the same quadrilogy series, the Blu-ray for Aliens allows you to watch either the theatrical or extended versions of the movie. Now that that's out of the way, let's discuss Newt's family and the Hadley's Hope colony on LV-426. After Ripley is through the investigation on Gateway involving the events of the Nostromo from the first film, the movie cuts to LV-426 and Hadley's Hope, where we see the complex's buildings, machinery, and vehicles. Inside, the administrator and a crew member are talking about a salvage team set out to investigate a site, which ends up being the derelict ship, the one we saw from the first Alien movie, in which Kane stumbled upon the alien eggs and had a facehugger attack him. The team that's sent out to investigate is none other than Newt and her family. Once they pull up to the ship, Newt's parents enter. After an unusually long time away, Newt's mom races into the vehicle, screaming into the radio about an emergency as Newt's father has a facehugger on him, causing sheer panic. After watching both versions, I'm very mixed about the entire sequence of events revolving around the colony and the facehugger attacking Newt's family. I am mixed because for the theatrical version, you go through the interrogation scene revolving around Ripley and Gateway. During the interrogation, they tell Ripley that LV-426 is safe and that an entire colony is there, and Ripley, who just survived the xenomorph from LV-426, is furious that they will set a colony as it will become nothing more than a graveyard for the inhabitants. The movie establishes the suspense early on. What will happen to the colony? Are they safe? Is the xenomorph still there? Then when Ripley and the Marines arrive on LV-426 and patrol Hadley's Hope, we see how destroyed and isolated the station is. Clearly something attacked the base, or maybe a freak accident occurred and everyone left. Later, when the Marines check for life signals, they find a multitude of signatures, signifying that the inhabitants are alive. However, once the Marines enter the selected premise, the colonists are, in fact, dead or dying as the xenomorphs have cocooned them. But all that suspense, build-up, and revelation becomes severely diminished and erased due to the additional colony scenes and Newt's family investigating the derelict. We know that the facehugger will lay an egg in Newt's father, causing a xenomorph to be born, and repeat the process with the other inhabitants. Like the entire plot point of going to LV-426 to check on the camp and the patrol of the complex feels like a waste of time because we already know that people are dead, minus Newt of course. Even the signal loses the feeling of hope because we know those life forms are the xenomorphs and maybe a few barely clinging to life residents. The addition of Newt's family erases the movie's search and rescue suspense it spent building. However, one can easily argue that when you arrive at the colony and see the wreckage, you can deduce that xenomorphs attacked the place and that the life signals are a false promise of survivors. Another argument is the name of the movie. The movie is called Aliens, which is plural, meaning there be more than one alien. I get that, okay? But imagine if the twist for the film The Sixth Sense had a scene in the beginning where you learn of the twist. Don't you think the rest of the movie will feel pointless? And look, obviously, the entire film of Aliens does not revolve around the Marines trying to find the inhabitants and crew members, as those sequence of events begin and end in the third part of the movie, but I think you get what I'm trying to say. If you're going to create suspense, at least let it happen without us knowing the result immediately. Also, doesn't adding a facehugger attacking Newt's family overrun the detail that Halley's Hope secretly researched facehuggers with Weyland-Yutani's cooperation? A fact we find out later in the film, which allows us to learn how the base became attacked. The secret research also ties into the beginning of the movie, where Ripley has Burke swear that there will not be any research into whatever may be down there. I think I've rested my case on this one, so let's move on to Ripley finding out her daughter is dead. In the aftermath of the first Alien movie, Ripley had been in cryosleep for 57 years until a salvage team found her shuttle and brought it to the Gateway station. After an intense nightmare revolving around a xenomorph bursting from her chest, Ripley sits in a room displaying a holographic woodland. As Burke arrives, Ripley asks if he found any information on her daughter, Amanda. Burke confirms he had, but it's unfortunate news. Her daughter Amanda died 2 years prior. Due to Ripley being in cryosleep, she did not age, but with her daughter living her life, she ended up being 66 years old when she passed. It's a somber moment, especially when Ripley tells Burke she promised to be there for Amanda's birthday. Since the special edition version was the one I first watched and continued to watch until I acquired the Blu-ray, I thought this was a good scene because it adds another layer to Ripley and Newt's character relationship and how Ripley becomes a mother figure to Newt. Also, as a side note, I was surprised when playing Alien Isolation by finding out the main character is Amanda. It was neat as it was an in-between of the first and second movies, but when I watched Alien 3, I was stumped when Ripley said she had no family because she did, as seen in both Aliens and the video games. But for the case of Aliens, I found out that that scene with Ripley hearing the news of her daughter's death was an extended scene. I wish this were in the theatrical version, as it is a sad moment and speaks to the idea of space travel and the consequences it could bring revolving around the loss of time. Plus, as mentioned, it helps add a layer to Ripley and Newt's character relationship. Moving on to the sentry guns, I must ask, why on earth was this removed? I know James Cameron had to cut time due to 20th Century Fox, so my question goes to the studio. How can you see this scene take place and think, yeah, this is a waste of time, call in James and have him cut it? Like, what? I mean, my god, the suspense this entire sequence builds of the Marines setting up the sentry guns and sealing the door is incredible. We hear the sentry guns blasting away at the xenomorphs and their cries as on screen the rounds of bullets deplete. The sentry guns are effective, but it's clear the enemy is an overwhelming number as the readouts continue to drop. Even after all that carnage, there are still xenomorphs out there. The sequence perfectly shifts from hope to hopelessness. Plus, this adds an explanation to how the aliens arrived in the room with Ripley and the Marines, because the aliens retreated by the time the second sentry gun was almost empty, prompting Ripley to tell Hicks that the xenomorphs will be looking for another way in, which later on, that alternative way is through the ceiling. Finally, I want to discuss a dialogue exchange between Newt and Ripley. It's a small moment, but it allows us to see Newt's mindset and how it changed due to the attack. After Ripley tells Newt she used to think monsters did not exist, Newt asks if her mother had a xenomorph grown her. Ripley says she does not know, and when Newt asks if Ripley has any children, Ripley confirms she has one, but that she's gone. Newt sees through that word choice and says, quote, "You mean dead," end quote. Again, it's a small exchange of dialogue, but it shows how the mind and worldview of a child such as Newt can drastically change by something traumatic. In Newt's eyes, the world is now bleak and filled with hideous monsters one could not imagine. There is no escapism, no joy, passion, fun, or imagination. Only death, loss, and despair. A child would think of someone being quote-unquote gone as seemingly packing up and leaving, or understanding that the phrase is a euphemistic way of saying someone has passed on. But for Newt, there is no point in being euphemistic or tiptoeing around a sensitive subject such as death, because death surrounds her, and she lives on the constant edge of meeting it. Overall, I enjoyed most of the extended scenes I covered here today. I thought the scene revolving around Ripley learning of her daughter's passing added another layer to the character relationship between Ripley and Newt, with Ripley seeing Amanda in Newt and wanting to rectify her not being there for Amanda through no fault of her own. The sentry guns blasting away at the xenomorphs as we watch the ammunition deplete, resulting in aliens getting away, is highly suspenseful and gives insight into how the aliens got to Ripley and the Marines later on. The small scene of extended dialogue between Ripley and Newt offers a glimpse into the mind of a young girl and how her worldview has drastically changed due to such a traumatic event and the continuation of said trauma. However, the biggest extended scene I do not like is Newt's family investigating the derelict and having a facehugger attack them. The extended scenes of the colony and the family kill any suspense and intrigue about whether the colony is in danger, whether it was a mistake to settle on LV-426, and what happened to the camp inhabitants once the Marines land on LV-426. But the great thing about this case is that you, as a viewer, have the option to watch the theatrical and special edition versions of the film, at least as long as you don't exclusively have the DVD version I own. It's not like the original Star Wars trilogy, in which George Lucas banned the distribution of the unaltered versions, and the only way to watch those is to either dust off your VCR or watch Harmy's despecialized editions or Project 4K77. With Alien Quadrilogy, it's like Blade Runner, where you can watch both the original and altered versions at your convenience. To that, I say thank you. So, have you watched both the theatrical and special edition versions? If so, which one do you prefer? Do you agree or disagree with my take on the extended scenes I discussed? Let me know below. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and take care.